Welcome to yet another episode of My First Vote. I'm Sanjana Chauhan, and this morning we are with the very bright students of the Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts. Good morning, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And this is where we're going to be understanding and gauging the mood of first-time voters in the country up ahead of the all-important Lok Sabha polls. So, guys, how many of you, I want to check, have registered to vote? Why so less, guys? No, there are enough. As we've been seeing, the young voters, especially this year in the country, are going to be making up for as much as the assembly seats. But in Pune district alone, we've seen that the voter registration is not very high. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think young people are not registering to vote? What are the issues that the youth are facing in the country?
Firstly, I feel like with Pune, especially since everyone's there's a lot of student population in Pune, everyone's from different places. A lot of students don't get to go to the voting places and vote. The facilities are not that high. Secondly, as students, to be very honest, we keep talking about this amongst ourselves. We kind of don't have a lot of faith in a lot of things that's happening, and hence we're just like, what's the point of voting?
For me, I think what I have observed around me is that people do want to vote. All people want to vote. It's just that firstly the facilities are not they're not conducive enough, or they're not favorable for us to go and register and all. I tried registering many times and thrice it failed, and the fourth try I got my voter ID card made.
Right, but you know, there are also, like you said, there are issues that are bothering you on a daily basis, right? So would you not feel that, hey, it's imperative for me to vote so I can be the change?
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
So, given that she said that people are not as much affected by certain things, so they're not able to decide their opinions on certain things for voting.
Okay.
But there also comes this strata of society that is directly affected, but they are so done with everything and everything that's happening around that they again do not want to vote. Because I come from a defense background, and the armed forces have been politicized by every political party in our country, and the only utility of these armed forces is into cases when you need political mileage, or if there's a war that's breaking out.
Right.
Only then people care
and
about them.
Is that the sense that you get in all the kids who come from a defense background?
Majority of us, and that's what we keep talking about. And the problem is, it's not just it just ends at political mileage and getting their utility, because the armed forces have been neglected for so long, and it really bothers all the kids who have a defense background.
Right.
And that is why we don't want to vote, because we don't have faith in anyone at this point.
Okay. What were you saying? I'll just come to you.
I think for a lot of us, it's also become a fact where, at least from what I've heard from other people, is that at least the previous elections, there was such a large emphasis on the young population to try to vie for their votes. And at least from my observations in Pune alone, I can't speak for the rest of the country, we haven't really seen that far-reaching appeal to the young masses to come and vote.
Right.
From either side of on both sides of the coin. So it's not that that makes us feel unimportant. It's just that if we're not reached out to, if we're not, told why we should or shouldn't vote. Now, I'm not saying we're mindless enough to just vote whenever someone tells us to vote for them. But if we're not told why we should or shouldn't, or we don't have anyone reaching out to us on a larger scale, then there's very little awareness created as to why we should vote. And similarly, you don't have the motivation to go do it after that.
Okay, 1 second. I'll come to you. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think one of the main factors that I think the youth is still very hesitant about voting is because it's so long, the process to vote, and the second is because most of the reforms don't directly appeal to us. they are not very us oriented. Like right now, as a 19-year-old, the measures put forth by the government is not directly benefiting, or is not even a disadvantage to me. Very honestly, I feel like the younger part of the demographic is feeling very left out of the political scenario at all, because they're directing towards women, they're directing towards men in certain backgrounds, but they're not exactly looking at students and what issues they could be having at all. So the emphasis on what is important to a student is not coming in. So honestly, when I cast my vote, I would be casting my vote because I'm a responsible citizen, but it's not because I expect anything I will expect any kind of benefit out of the situation, because there won't be any benefit.
Pertinent, very fair, very fair. Go ahead.
So drawing on Isha's point, if you look at the electoral system that we follow, which is the first past the post system. So if a particular constituency has 5 candidates from 5 different political parties, even if one party manages to get 30% of the vote, that candidate secures to win the seat. So in that case, the question we ask ourselves is, in whose political demographic do we fall in whose vote bank do we fall in? So in which political party's manifesto do I find my issues to be catered in? Which party's political manifesto do I find a sense of resonance is something we're yet to find.
Okay, so what are your issues? Just using that as a jumping off point, really quickly in like say one sentence, if you guys can tell me, what are your issues, particularly of the people sitting over here?
Beginning from something like a women's safety, like that's for everybody, not just students, but women's safety.
So if you ask like almost anyone or everyone right now, everyone's facing some kind of harassment, teasing, sexual problem. Like over here, if you ask each and every girl on like every day and a daily basis, on this very road, and if something like this which is affecting us in this big like manner is not getting addressed by any of the parties, why should we even like go and vote? Because like they are not even catering to us. Like if we make up for like such a huge part of the voting, like the number of people, and none of the parties are even looking at this issue, and the things they talk about don't address, like they cater to our needs, what is the point of like going and like...
So let me ask you this, would any of you choose politics as your career?
I want to.
Yeah? Yes? Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you, basis, we're doing all kinds of bashing here, and that's quite common. But I'm saying, if you were to look at what's actually going well, who do you think is, you know, a good youth leader, and what are they doing right?
I honestly think that the Congress has a better sense of what we need in the country.
Okay.
Sorry, but it's just that when you're running a multi-religious country on the basis of one religion, there are too many issues just associated with propagation of Hinduism. Because we're living in a country with so many religions, so many types of people, that you just can't... Like, I feel that fundamentally, if the party believes that, and if it comes from that kind of ideology, and if it has the belief that, and even if it has the people who are funding the party are also of that Hindu Rashtra belief, it's very hard to understand what the country needs, because you're not looking at the mass. You're only looking at a certain sect of people who are looking for a fundamentalist idea.
Right.
I kind of absolutely agree to her. I wouldn't have imagined myself to say this 5 years back, to like say that, you know, Congress is a better choice. But in the past term, we have realized that going by one fundamentalist idea of like Hinduism is not the way we can go. So I'm not exactly for the leader, but of course I'm for the party and what the party has stood for before BJP came to power.
So that's what I'm asking you. So okay, I understand religion is definitely an issue. Where you perhaps feel as the youth, you feel like, hey, you know, free speech is going to be a problem because of those things, or like it's going to draw lines for me, you know, everywhere. What are the other issues that you feel that, say, one party or one leader is actually addressing, that they're doing right with regards to resonating with you guys?
Something that I personally have felt is very pertinent to this election is the detraction that BJP has shown. Firstly towards the youth, and secondly by creating a very conflicting atmosphere and very destructive environment for speech, for freedom of speech, as you said. And secondly, one more thing which I feel is very pertinent to me as someone from the youth population is job opportunities, employment opportunities. You see the recent statistics which were tried to be stifled very suspiciously by the ruling party. These things are something which really affect the youth population and which really govern how we are going to vote.
I don't know about AAP as a political party, but I feel like Atishi Marlena in Delhi is doing a fabulous job in the sense with raising the standards of public education. And I feel like somewhere we have to grow out of the binary of BJP versus Congress, because I feel like that makes them complacent. And because somewhere they have this security that it's either going to be them or us. But I feel like we have to start like expanding our options.
Right.
Also, talking about issues, there are certain issues that there are certain patterns that we see across political parties, whether it's BJP or Congress. And I see that in the way that they treat farmers, in the way that they treat manual scavengers. Let's take the incumbent government, okay? We have our Prime Minister going around washing the feet of manual scavengers, but they haven't allocated a single rupee of the fund that is supposed to go to the eradication of manual scavenging. And I feel Congress has done nothing better to, elevate them. And I feel like somewhere they do it for political traction only. And I feel like this is something we have to hold them accountable for. Okay. Because if we don't speak about the marginalized, then who will?
The Aam Aadmi Party didn't necessarily not expand themselves outside of Delhi. They clearly tried and it didn't work. So it's not entirely on the population of India or the population of the states in which AAP tried, but it's also on them. The onus has to fall on them. If they lost an election, it's not just because people are fickle and they don't like AAP just because of who they are, but clearly they didn't reach out to them. They didn't present an argument good enough for them to be able to get votes.
Okay.
Bouncing off of that, like in another sense, we haven't found like you were asking who's one youth leader that we really, we were like, we don't have one. None of us would be able to identify someone in politics that we identify with who has come and told us that your problems are also valid. We're going to be talking about these practical problems, and that is where the whole issue comes in. That's why young voters don't want to go. No one is talking to us. End of the day, it's going to be and like when they talk to us like we're children, and they make us feel like we are too young to have opinions about what's going to happen in our country, but it's going to be our country in the future.
So going ahead from Upasana's point where she spoke about under 25 working population, we remember PM Modi talking about how a lot of the young population goes abroad to work or to study. That is because we don't have an option here. Nobody gives us a job here. We don't have a way to go about this. So if we are not given the opportunities, we will go outside, because we're also talking from a more privileged background where we are saying we have the resources to go outside, but if we do, we will try and make sure we get that, because we're also talking about a better living standard, in which case something as small as transport or something as small as the first paycheck that I get when I'm working somewhere. It really does matter, which is just not seen.
So this entire debate about there being one singular youth leader who solves our problems is itself flawed, because how can our ideals in their totality culminate into one person? Because it's not a Rahul Gandhi that is a problem, it's not Narendra Modi is the problem, it's this system that generates Rahul Gandhi and Narendra Modi and puts them in a position where they can influence so many people is what needs to be figured out altogether. Because when we elect political leaders, they act as representatives of a pre-existing will that we generate as a society. But we do not generate that will. It is those leaders who generate that will for us through the institutions of media, through institutions of schooling, and through these several institutions where they shape discourses. So the idea of community, we as a civil society must re-envisage the idea of community altogether, so that we as a collective can at different points of time in different spaces in the civil society revisit what we consider to be secularism, what we consider to be democracy. And while these seem as ideas, the issue of a public transport cannot be solved unless we figure out what democracy is, because everything is in each way possible connected to each other.
Okay. Sure.
Make a small point. I think the question that you asked me, if I was the General Secretary, the one thing I would talk about, which I was reminded by what Oishika said, is there is no financial aid that is available for us to go abroad.
Yeah.
And that's there, like the US has the FAFSA, they have financial aid, they give student loans
and also
to their own
loans
people.
are they're very well structured, and they're not, have you guys looked at the interest on education loans in India? It's like ridiculous. The interest is. I mean, you can get personal loans for lesser, house loans and stuff. So,
but educational loans stand at 9%, and if I'm a woman, it's a 1.25% rebate, which is still still a staggering amount of money that I have to pay. And my parents I would not want my parents to pay for my masters, because it's exorbitant for me to go out and study and them having to pay for everything.
Right.
But the government till date has not got out a plan to be able to say that, other than the private fellowships like the Ratan Tata Fellowship or whatever is there, those are private. There is nothing in the government structure to say that you want to apply abroad, come, we'll give you this at a loan. Like Singapore has one where you study there for 3 years and then you sign a bond for the next 4 years.
Right.
And you have to work there and then you can come back.
Correct.
But there is nothing in our system like that.
I think that the biggest problem in this conversation and in what we see in the way the political parties are advertising themselves right now is that we're thinking of these posts as position of power and not position of representation. So what happens is that when the candidates actually reach those positions, they forget that they're representing we, the people of India, and that includes people across religions and disabled people and people with disorders. And when you reach those positions and you don't address them or you mock them, what it tells us is that you don't care about representing us. And I think that that leads to us worrying about who to vote for, because again, we don't want to put people in power so that they can ridicule us or so that they can just sit there comfortably and not care about us.
Well, you brought up mental health for one. That's become a really big issue because of the fact that it's still, as much as we're moving past it in a cultural sense, there's still a huge stigma about it systematically and institutionally speaking, especially not only in, say, government institutions, but also certain private institutions. And that in itself needs to be addressed. The slightest improvement makes it think it's just been removed is discrimination on all, be it race, caste, religion, gender. And we see the slightest bit of improvement in it in any sphere of it, and we think the problem in itself is gone. Or rather, if we don't hear about it, it's as if the problem doesn't exist. So at some point, we are going to have to address it. So in answering your question, what kind of leader would I be? At least the one thing I would like to do is set up some sort of institution or some sort of body that could help to address these situations, because as one leader you cannot address everything, but what you can do is you can create units of specialization that can help tackle these problems in a better way than you yourself could.
Since independence has led to a bureaucratic strata that is very lethargic and apathetic to problems of common people in terms of even implementation of policies, because even if we have brilliant policies initiated by the government, they are not carried out and they don't pan out as well as they can, because there is this bureaucratic class that just wants to sit on their chairs and do nothing about it and misuse the requirements of people in terms of and abuse their ability to make a change. So I feel like if I were in a position where I can be a political leader, I would first look after the and improve the quality of the bureaucratic.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think an issue that I have seen affect a lot of people around me and is one of the most basic things is accessible healthcare, which like mental health we talked about, but also just physical health, because I have seen families who have had to make decisions between treating their parent for cancer or saving money for their child's education. And people shouldn't die because they don't have money. Like even public hospitals that are made, the good ones are made in areas that have people of a certain income anyway. But if you look at like where your house help lives, or if you look at where people of a certain economic background live, there is no accessible public healthcare there. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on.
Okay, go ahead.
If I was a youth leader, one of the things which our political leaders don't do is that they don't address the minorities as much. They either pander to them, but they don't really go and talk to them. So like a conversation where they come to college, or forget college, forget the student population for once. go to, like she said, Northeast, go to J&K, figure out what the actual issues are. No one really wants to know what the issues are. They see, okay, this is a problem here, let's just try and expand this as much as possible so we can get a vote bank out of it.
Yeah.
Like so many like Jammu and Kashmir, for example, like he was saying, for the past 70 years it's been a problem, and it's not like it has been able to fester into such a problem, but no one has gone there and no one has really asked Kashmiri people how they feel about the situation. Yeah. In Northeast, people don't ask how the Northeastern people feel about this. Do they want to be part of India? What they want to do? No one really thinks about these things. So that's one thing which I would definitely go about. And also, like, it's climate change. Like, I mean, we think like climate change is not like it's not going to affect us in the short term, but fact is that we have like 11 years before the planet is going to, like, before we can make any reversible change. And political parties are only thinking, and in fact even us for that matter, can't blame everything on the government, but we only think about, okay, election, we think about the social political issues, not about the long-term issues, like what's going to happen when we run out of fossil fuel, what's going to happen when the planet's going to be unlivable. These kind of things, we don't really talk about them, and we really need to. Even though they're conversations on an international platform, they need to be brought into the national platform as well, so that common people actually know about these things and they can do their own little part in making the planet better.
One issue which, like, for the past few years, I've noticed that social media has been a really big influence. Like, there have been like open bashing of the opposition, taking jibes at political leaders, like, you know, clearly, and most of the entire youth population is on social media. So, like, openly opposing and openly making fun of political leaders and political parties by other political parties is what is trying. It's like basically dividing, like, how do I put it into words? Like, the government right now is trying to manipulate the youth into, like, all the programs that they are trying to execute. When they come about the plan, it's like totally hyped on social media that we are coming up with this plan, we are doing this, and everyone support us. But we forget about the execution because it is hyped so much on social media. We just feel that it's a perfect plan. We do not see how it's actually executed.
Okay, so we're running out of time here. So really quickly, I'm going to ask you guys if you had to use this as a medium to send your message to the incumbent government, your next government, and what is it as the youth of this nation, as a very important representative of the vote bank of this country, what is it that you would like to say?
Even like coming back to the youth leader point, like she said, the relatable, like you can't really like relate, but like the political leaders out there also not really relate to it. But one thing I would like, if I were to become a youth leader, or if anyone, or even the people out there who are already there, maybe address the issues in like a different method. Don't talk about like anything that is being covered or being talked about. The conversation takes place after it is done. Like suppose like a rape or like farmer suicide or any kind of issue. It is being talked about only when something has happened. Like we know these issues are existing. We know it has been going on for a long time. How is it not being addressed already? And when the numbers go too up, then that is when like these issues are being talked about. So maybe start working with the things that are like problems that are already existing. Then like step by step go on to that. Not really just like keep coming up with policies or like demonetization, GST, and then don't do anything about it. Maybe like start like with one step at a time and like go about these issues.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
One sentence, one quick line.
The future government that comes into power, resistance to change is not the solution. Just giving the reason that systems don't change this easily is not a fact. You do not have to be constantly reminded that you are part of the citizenship first and you are a leader later. That should not be a constant reminder. You have to understand that, and at a very deep level.
Okay.
4 words, reach out to us. We really matter. We do constitute a very huge part of the population, and we are going to bring you to power or not bring you to power.
Okay.
Talk to people, talk to the real issues, and just one note, nationalism does not mean supporting you. Nationalism means loving this country and wanting to be in this country, and which I can tell you most of us want to be. So we're all nationalists by nation, so like just look at us and talk to us.
Let the youth, you know, help you out, because maybe you think we are not old enough, but maybe sometimes we might have solutions to your problem that are very pragmatic and not based on ideology.
Okay.
One basic thing that when we have issues and we bring up issues, we want to talk to you and not talk to your goons and not talk to your trolls. So it's better if leaders address that in the first primary instance. Moreover that, don't take voters for granted. And as he said, if we brought you to power, we can also take you out of power.
Don't just play the blame game. Focus on actual issues rather than just insulting the opposition.
Okay.
A lot of the issues we have are solvable. Focus on solving them instead of bickering between yourselves.
And there you heard it. Big solutions coming in from the extremely powerful but underrated minds of this country's youth. Thank you so much for watching. We're reporting today from the Symbiosis University, the Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts. Thank you so much for joining us.